Hello and welcome back to Vintage Treasures. And today, let me put that gun down. Don't want to shoot you guys. Today we're going to be looking at General Traag from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series. Overall, great figure. One of my favorites. Definitely underrated. So yeah, let's get into this. General Traag was released in 1989, of course, by Mirage Studios and Playmates Toys. Uh, He had a lot of colors for an 89 figure, and I think that's what makes him so interesting. General Traag was portrayed in the show as one of the Dimension X guards from Dimension X, Krang's home planet. There was millions of these. They were a species of animal, or I guess rock in this case. But one thing I am disappointed about in this, I guess not in the figure, but in the concept, is that Traag was released, and he would be the big, bulky, the brown-colored rock. Now, there was a taller, gray-colored rock in the cartoon, which doesn't have any figure release in the vintage line. So I was a bit disappointed when I found out that there was no release for that particular character in the original line of figures. Looking at the figure's face right here, we can see that early line grotesque look that all the figures had, with the crooked nose and the rocky texture, which is amplified by the black Sharpie-like or animation-like lines in there to make him look like a rock, and not like a soggy paper bag. Gives it dimension. And the paint on this guy is absolutely great. I mean, obviously mine's been worn over the years, but he has a lot of color on him. As you see, he has green here and a different green for the helmet. He's got yellow for this little crab thing, of course the black, then the white for the teeth and the eyes. The black is also there as well. And yeah, overall, there's some red on there even, and orange, but we'll see that a bit later. And looking at the bottom half of this figure, we can see that red I mentioned, and the orange that I mentioned, of course being on that snake. And then we have the blue of his boots, which is not used anywhere else. And I think that adds a whole lot of character. Using colors once on a figure can make it look more realistic, bring some surrealism into there. So I think that was a very interesting choice, but a good one. As far as articulation goes on this guy, he has full 360 on his neck, right there. His arms move at the top up here on both sides. The arms are different here, as this one has a 360 swivel, and this one has, it stops here when it lays flat, so about 90 degrees. You can move his arm. And then he has the regular leg joints for the turtles. And with all that great paint that I mentioned earlier, the same with Muckman. These figures, especially the early ones, didn't have enough paint to equal the amount of or the level of detail on these figures, because you can't barely see these things because they're not painted. We have like a little lizard there, which looks a bit like one of the turtles, and we have a spider web with the spider, and there's just a whole lot of grotesque detail in there, to of course to make him look like a rock, basically, because that's what he is. He is a rock from Dimension X with legs. And I also love the way this figure looks like a regular army soldier, but he looks grotesque like any other figure from the Turtles line. Very gross, very graphic, very detailed. And Varner, of course, sculpted a lot of these figures. I'm not sure if he did Traag in particular, but I know he did a lot of detailed characters in the line. And speaking of detail, if you look at this guy's foot, we have a little turtle sculpted on there, which is just completely unnecessary, but definitely makes for a great amount of detail on somewhere where you really wouldn't expect it. And no villain would be a villain if they didn't have their weapons, or in this case, their accessories. Now, of course, you can see the elephant in the room here. This gun is in very bad condition, but I find it hard to find some of these accessories on their own. I mean, if I looked hard enough, I could probably find one, But this was bitten by a dog. I've tried to straighten it out multiple times and it just doesn't end up looking very well. The back has fallen off, and this bit here, I think this used to go out to here like a triangle, and there used to be a little thing here. He can still hold this little bit, but it's just not as strong, and definitely you can't play with that. But as far as the toy goes, it's sculpted very well. Of course, we have the little magazine there. We have the scope on the top, and the little things on the what are these called? I can't think right now. These thingies, the long thingies that have the bullets come out of them. Tube thing. The barrel, that's it. The barrel of the gun. These little things, the little discs on here, which I'm sure I don't know what they're called. Put it in the comments if you do know. But looking at these other accessories, which are in better condition, we have this little laser gun, which I think displays better with him, as Dimension X is a post-apocalyptic, futuristic type of planet, and I think this fits it well with the futuristic look, but you still have the rugged little wrapping around there to make it look a little dingy, even with just the sculpting. And then lastly, we have his little knife, which is the same sculpt as Bebop's and the foot soldier's knife as well. So it's just in a different color. This one comes in a very deep blue. Now, one of the features on this figure that can either be seen as a downfall or a benefit is this hand right here, because it's meant to hold his knife, and when you do put his knife in his hand, it fits in there very snug, and it looks right. It just looks like he's ready to stab something, and well, that's how it's supposed to look. But you know, also you don't have the freedom of putting a gun in there without the fear of breaking it. Now, I don't know if this is a universal thing. I highly doubt it, but it might be possible because of the extended pieces, and I don't think this hand helps because kids might have tried to put the gun in there and ended up snapping it, but I don't know if that's universal. Now, this other arm I find very cool because you can put his little blaster here down on the ground like he's dragging it, up like he's about to shoot, or on his shoulder, leaning on his shoulder, like a cool little pose, something that'll look nice on the shelf. And of course the dagger hand is going to have to hold the dagger. Yeah, so this is one way you can do it. And this is another. I mean, of course it'd look better if he had his gun all together, but I still think it's worth keeping him on display like that because I just love the way that looks, just the way it points into the sky. Had to get in a bit of a larger shot to show off how I display him, but this is basically how I display him, and you can see him from the different sides there. And if you're interested in what the figure looks like, if you are interested in purchasing one, because I know a lot of people probably don't want to buy this and then end up wishing they hadn't, monetarily and collectively, because there's no point in having something that you don't want. So usually when I rate these figures, I start off with from a kid's point of view, so as a toy, and then I'll talk about as a collector because I think that's very relevant in this conversation. But we're going to start with the toy part. General Traag, I think these are all of his accessories. They're pretty cool. I mean, he comes with 2 guns and a dagger, and you can't really beat that. I mean, of course there's no actual bullets or ammunition, but you can pretend, and it's just a really cool figure. I don't expect any play features in this figure because, to be realistic, there wasn't really any play features in this line at the time. I think this might have been the year or the year before before they released the Wacky Action Turtles, so none of those mechanisms. Those also hindered a lot of articulation and also bulked up these figures to a unattractive scale. So I'm glad that there's no play features in this because On this scale, they don't have a lot to work with. It's easy to do on masters because of the size of them, but it's harder to do when you have these smaller figures. So let's talk about collectability. This guy has it all, okay? The accessories are easy to find. The accessories look great with him. They match. He's an army builder. He's cheap. Not a lot of people are army building him, but you can definitely do it. And it'd look right, and it would make sense in canon. So definitely something I'm thinking about doing when I get enough money to do so, and I don't have anything else I want to buy, which, let's be realistic, in a collecting setting, there's always something to buy. I say this 100 times. I think I'm done buying. I'm done with my collection. And I'm like, you know what? I need this figure. So I will army build him over time if I see one for cheap, especially with some accessories. But yeah, definitely a cool figure. The paint is nice. Quality. You have no downfalls for this figure, except for the edge of his helmet. Likes to rub a lot. His boots, of course, like to rub a lot, but that's really with any toy. And his back, his rear end, I have one where the rear end is pretty bad on it. So that's stuff you really want to look out for if you're looking to purchase one of these. Just look over the listing pretty well, and you should be set. But yeah, definitely one you should pick up if you collect Ninja Turtles. If you enjoyed today's video, please consider subscribing to the channel. I post content like this, Ninja Turtles, Masters of the Universe, once a week, every Wednesday. So if that's stuff that interests you, consider subscribing to the channel. Yeah, I exclusively post this type of content on here, so you won't see anything random on my channel. But anyways, enjoy the rest of your day or night, and goodbye.